What is going on, everyone? This is Miles Dompier, and welcome to the 97th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined by my good pal, one of my favorite dudes in the entire business, Jeff Grubb of Game Mess and Giant Bomb. Jeff, how are you doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
I'm doing good. It's a nice day to just talk about video games for once. Let's change things up and talk about video games. I went outside. It's sunny here in Cleveland. I'm feeling good. I got a burrito, so I'm nice and fueled up and ready to go. So yeah, I'm ready to do it.
You got some protein in you. It's a beautiful Ohio morning.
The carnitas are hitting right today. All right,
yeah.
They're hitting right.
Love to hear that, man. Stoked to have you on. We have a lot to talk about. Like you said, we're going to be talking about video games. You know, one of my favorite things to talk about on this planet, video games. And there's been some video game stuff to talk about. So, Resident Evil 4 previews, hands off, are in the wild. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Wolong Fallen Dynasty, our impressions of that brutal experience from Team Ninja. We're going to be talking about where the hell is Starfield? Where's the showcase? Where's the shadow drop? What's going on with Starfield? We're going to be talking about the rest of Xbox in 2023. We're going to be talking about the ongoing developments surrounding Activision Blizzard King, baby. We're going to be talking about Xbox potentially selling off and so much more. And so much more. But before we get into all of that, this is not your first time on the show. You've been on the show many times before. So I'm not going to do the typical spiel. I just want to know what's new. Let everyone know what's new with you, man. It's been a few months. Your hair looks different. That's one thing right off the bat. It does not match the avatar that I had made for you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So what's new, man? How you been?
I'm good. It's honestly, it's like just busy trying a lot of stuff over at Giant Bomb, keeping the Game Mess fans happy, doing a lot of stuff there. It was fun trying to figure out how everything was going to settle in terms of do a lot of gaming stuff now. I don't need to do so much overlapping content that repeats myself. So how can I figure things out? It was fun to take Game Mess to sides, our old weekly podcast that we still do it, me and Mike Minotti, and figuring out what can we do to change it up. And it's you know what, we can just make it more adversarial. And so it's each week, it's me and Mike just either competing in something against one another, trying to be the best at deciding what's the best draft you could do for 32-bit and 64-bit games. And we did that last week, and it was a ton of fun. So it's it's cool to just keep experimenting and finding new ways to entertain stuff and have interesting conversations. And I don't know, I still really like talking about games. So having all these opportunities to do so just feels I'm really lucky. So yeah, that's mostly where I'm at. And then I'm planning trips to go to Super Nintendo World here pretty soon, and we're looking at other things to traveling. We are starting our conversations talking about E3, and it's cool to be you know what, we can be our own thing at E3. We don't need to worry about the industry coming together and providing the right content so that's worth it for us. We're going to make it worth it for ourselves. It's cool to have that sort of that in our hands, that control in our hands. So I'm very excited about this year. Very excited about the Game Mess continuing, and wherever we end up watching the next showcase where the next big game gets announced, we're going to be there. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the infamous duo that is Mike the Body Minotti and Jeff Grubb, legendary. Love your shows. You guys do Game Mess. You guys do Last of the Nintendogs. And the team at Giant Bomb is doing a lot of really great, just fun stuff. What I love about Giant Bomb is it's focused on fun and playing games, talking about games, and that is kind of the driving force. So it is cool that you guys have this vessel to go and create your own voice and space in the games industry, and as opposed to I got to do a traditional preview for X, Y, and Z because that's what the marketing beat is right now. So
yeah, it's good to have some freedom. You know, we try to stay on top of stuff, but it's also what can we do today that would be fun? And it's that's that guiding light, that North Star has been very useful.
Yeah, love to hear that, man. Yeah, so we're going to have some fun today. We're going to be talking about it a lot. Some quick housekeeping. Before we get into all of that, if you haven't heard, Xbox Chaturdays has a little Discord. Our numbers are growing slowly but surely, so if you haven't dropped in there, there's a link in the description if you want to join. We do a community Q&A at the end of the episode. And then I want to give a shout out to our channel members, all the people who've been supporting the show. We got Nick W., we got Patrick, we got VSimco, Cinedex, Anthony, Assassin, and a special shout out to our producers, Mr. Joanna Dark and Hargi Chani. So, Jeff, let's start with talking about one of my favorite games of all time. One of what is considered to be one of the greatest games of all time, generally speaking, and that is Resident Evil 4. So this week, a lot of people were privy to a hands-off preview. Capcom sent out some footage of the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake to a lot of folks to kind of give them an idea of what to expect. We've seen some trailers, we've seen some kind of sort of deep dives into gameplay, but this was an extended look at some of the end game scenes of Resident Evil 4 and some of the most iconic scenes. So going into all of this, I had just played Resident Evil 4 maybe 6 months ago, so I'm very up to speed. Loved the game, played it on GameCube, played it on PS2, played it on Wii, played it on Xbox 360, played it on Xbox One. I have bought this game so many damn times, and I'm going to be buying it again with this remake. That being said, when I replayed it most recently, I knew that the remake was in development. And there were so many moments where I thought to myself, they're not going to put this in the game. They're not going to put this in the remake. This scene is dumb. Like, I love the game, but this scene is absolutely stupid. They're not going to do it. And then this latest preview basically said, you know what? Yeah, every stupid scene that you know from Resident Evil 4, it's going to be here, baby. This is the faithful-ass remake of Resident Evil 4. So how are you feeling about the game, the original, and the remake, and what we've seen so far of these?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. This is a game that if you're going to remake it, and obviously we knew they were going to make it for a long time just based on where they were going, as well as rumors. When you sit down, you decide, okay, we've remade, 1 a long time ago, 2 and 3. These are older games that when we do go to remake them, it makes a lot of sense. Once you start getting to 4, it's like, well, now you're getting into the GameCube territory. That's some timeless era stuff where that game, there's a reason you've released it over and over and over again everywhere, and people keep buying it. So then what is the impetus here? Like, what is the guiding sort of wisdom that you're going with about what is the right way to treat the content inside the game? And I think the answer should be, and I think this probably is the answer they arrived at, is we should be really proud of even the dumbest stuff that we did in this game, because people love it. It is a video game. And I think that we should not try to run away or hide or be embarrassed about the things that we were trying to do back then, even if some of the stuff looks silly. And that's, we're talking about a handful of instances in a game that has all kinds of stuff in it. It's not just like a parade of embarrassments or anything like that. And even when I say embarrassment, I don't mean it's like bad. It's just video games. And I think that they recognize that. I think they know that. I mean, Capcom as a publisher was just like, no, we can make anything work in whatever context. And I think they're right. And I think Resident Evil 4 is going to be the best example of that.
Yeah, when you talk about a video game, that's exactly why so many people, I think, connected with Resident Evil 4. There were so many scenarios and sequences and outrageous events that would never happen in any other medium. You would never combine all of these elements, all of these scenes into a movie. That would not happen. And if you did, nobody on Earth would watch it. But somehow, some way, Capcom and Shinji and that legendary team brought all of these elements of action and horror and cheese into one experience that just kept you on your toes. You never really knew where it was going. It didn't necessarily make sense. Even Mikami has come out and said, like, when they do the remake, I wouldn't mind if they adjusted some of the story beats because we kind of made it up as we went, essentially. So even the people who made the game knew that some of that stuff was just ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous. So it's just this rare instance where it just worked. It came together and it worked. So a lot of people, when they announced this, were a little annoyed, I think, because you look at Resident Evil 2 and you say, yeah, I can't play the original. Like, the original does not hold up in terms of graphics. It does not hold up in terms of controls. I don't really want to go back and play the original Resident Evil 2. So that makes sense. Same with 3. But a lot of people were like, hey, Resident Evil 4, perfectly playable. How dare you go back and remake this? What are you doing? Don't you taint one of my favorite experiences of all time. And so it is cool to see them leaning into the faithful remake. And I am very curious to see how this all plays out. Do you think there's a world where this exceeds the reputation of the original and delivers an experience that's better in every way than the original?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a world where we can go into and be like, wow, this exceeded our expectations. And that the big thing there is what you sort of touched on, where the storytelling, while fun in Resident Evil 4, you could tell it was pieced together. And so if they start like pulling on some of those threads, and they're like, oh, this thread that got created, halfway through the game, why don't we just pull that back and attach something closer to the beginning so it feels more like a payoff. So it feels like you are attached to these things a little bit longer. And then when you get to the meat of those stories later in the game, it's like now we're hitting those beats again, and it feels really strong and it feels really good. I think they could totally do that. I think this is a studio that is capable of that, and it's like that would go a long way. On top of making the game look gorgeous with the RE engine, and on top of making sure that it's as fun as possible, and making sure that the combat is tuned for not just modern sensibilities, but for modern control schemes. And it's I think this is a publisher and a studio that is 100% capable of pulling off all of those things. And while it would be easy to mess these things up and come in under expectations, I think that's what a lot of us are literally expecting. So if this is if they can nail these things, which they've done before with Resident Evil 2 at the very least, if not also a little bit with Resident Evil 3, but definitely Resident Evil 2 remake. Well, I mean, they did it there. There's no reason to say it would be impossible for them to do it here.
Exactly. Resident Evil 2 kind of set this precedent for, hey, if you're going to remake it, this is the level you need to be at. Capcom came into the arena and came in hot, and they said, we know people love Resident Evil 2. We know people consider Resident Evil 2 to be one of the greatest survival horror experiences of all time, and we are going to remake that. And we are going to find a way to make it better in every possible way. And Resident Evil 2 is an example where I can confidently say, yes, the remake of Resident Evil 2 is better in every possible way than the original. And Resident Evil 2, going into it, again, one of my favorite games of all time. So I trust Capcom with 4. I know things will be cut. We know Salazar's going to be there. The Mr. Kennedy is they toned it down. It's definitely not as extreme. It's still there. The Krauser knife fight, some of those other iconic sequences have been shown. So as we go into this, we know stuff was cut with Resident Evil 3, Jeff. If there's one scene in particular that you are fighting to keep, or one line you are fighting to keep in Resident Evil 4 remake, what is it? What's going to be, if they cut it, what's going to hurt the most?
Yeah, I just, it's no particular one line or scene. It is, I do want, what is the little guy's name? Salazar, right? Yes, I want Salazar to just be as absurd as he was in the first time around. I think that it's so surprising and out of nowhere, and the character actually is like this larger than life looming figure in a lot of ways, and it's so much fun. And I don't want gaming to be afraid of being that anymore. So I want them to keep all that. It seems like they probably are.
What's the over under on the mech? The Salazar mech scene, is that staying in this game?
I think it will. I'm choosing to believe. I choose to believe it will.
I want to believe.
I do want to believe.
I want that fight. And one other thing that I will be very disappointed if they change is just the ending. Not necessarily the final boss fight. That can stay. That can change. But the jet ski ride into the sunset ending cannot change. If they change that that sequence of events, I will be so disappointed, because it's kind of got the Tiger King energy where you're just like, I'm sorry, what? After all of this, the culmination of all of these events, we get on a jet ski and ride into the sunset? That's how this game ends?
And there's nothing more free than riding on that jet ski towards the sun.
Oh, man. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm stoked for it. I'm really excited to see Resident Evil 4, and it's only a couple weeks away. We're going to be playing it very, very soon. So let's go. I'm excited. Want to give a shout out to all the amazing people joining us live. If you are tuning in for the first time, we are live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time over on the new channel, youtube.com/MilesDompier. So you might be familiar with my work over on Windows Central, but if you're just tuning in now and you've been, wondering where Xbox Chaturdays has been, it's been here. It's been on this little channel over here. So if you're new, subscribe as well. Really appreciate that. A couple super chats here regarding the Resident Evil 4 and Capcom situation. Jeremy G, Grubb Hype, appreciate you. Mr. Joanna Dark, hey Jeff. Oh my God. Hey Jeff, should Capcom remake Goat Veronica, which is Miles' all-time favorite Resident Evil game? Shout out to my dude, the GOAT, Miles Dompier. Jeff, where do you stand on Code Veronica? Yay? Nay?
Well, I know where not to stand, and that's in your way between you and getting that Goat Veronica. I know how much you need it.
Boy!
I think that there's a strong chance they get around to doing it at some point on the grand scale of time. It probably does come up here in the next 10 years or so, like as one of these remakes. Yeah, that seems totally reasonable, totally likely. Even if it's one that they it wasn't going to be their first choice. Obviously, we're going through their first choices right now. But when they get through all of these and they're looking around like, okay, do we do Dino Crisis or Code Veronica? I think the choice for them continues to be, well, yeah, we might do Dino Crisis, but we're also going to get back to Code Veronica. Another Resident Evil still is going to have that bigger play than anything else.
Yeah, they've invested in the Resident Evil brand in a huge way, and I think they owe a lot of their current business strength to Resident Evil and Resident Evil 7. That was the catalyst for where they are right now, and taking risks with their franchises and reinventing their franchises, and that paid off hugely. And now they're saying, all right, well, then we need to continue to invest in Resident Evil, give Resident Evil fans what they want. And I would definitely replay Code Veronica. It's one of those games. It's one of the few Resident Evils I've never beaten. I've tried so many times. I tried very recently, tried to play it on Xbox 360 or Xbox Series X via back compat, and I just can't. But I would play a remake in a heartbeat. And tinfoil hat time, Jeff. When Shinji left Tango, a lot of people were like, oh, damn. That's because he's going back to Capcom, baby. And he's going back to Capcom specifically to remake Code Veronica. You think that's the play?
I don't think so, but I don't know. Other people seem so sure about that. I don't know. That also feels a little bit like, Tom Brady's retiring. He should come back and retire sign a one-day contract with the Patriots so he can retire as a Patriot. It's like, yeah, go retire at Capcom and oversee this project or something. No, I don't think that's what's happening. I think human beings sometimes actually just want to be done with things.
The man's been in the business for a hot minute. So what I hope is he's doing exactly what he wants. He's put out a lot of great work. He's talked about how, as he gets later in his career, that he's looking to bring in the new generation, the next generation, and help them deliver games. And I think, a lot of people are saying, why would he leave Tango Gameworks after Hi-Fi Rush, like their best game?
Because his shares probably vested. Like he probably, he owned parts of Tango Gameworks, which then I'm sure got him shares in Bethesda, and then I'm sure once Microsoft made that big purchase, he was just waiting for all those shares to vest so he could cash them in and be like, oh, here's my payday. I oversaw some awesome games. This is what I was waiting for. Now I got enough. I'm peacing out. I mean, that's my guess, but I mean, maybe it is like, oh, he got that money and now he's also going to go do another studio, or just take his money and basically retire while also having a figurehead role at Capcom. I guess that's all possible. I just think the simplest solution, the simplest answer here is probably he got his money. Now it's time to go sleep.
Yeah, that's what I hope. Is the man, at this point doesn't really need to work, and if he got a good payday, I hope he's looking at Tango and said like, hey, Hi-Fi Rush is an example of these guys got it. All right, I was part of this. I was happy to be a part of it, but this proves that they're ready. They're ready to take on new challenges. I sculpted my little grasshoppers into this blossoming studio, and I'm out. I feel good. I can go out on a high note and say, peace, good luck to you. And if he decides to go back to Capcom and consult on Code Veronica, or I don't imagine he's going to be a full director if they do a Code Veronica remake, but maybe he'll look at it and give the final say, final blessing on that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I hope the man is just taking it easy. All right. We all deserve a little time off after 35, 40. How long has he been making games?
Just yes.
35,
he's been making games
years?
For yes. Yeah, forever.
Longer than I've been alive. Longer than most of us have been alive. So let the man sleep. All right. All right, and some other Capcom news. Capcom came out this week, the day of the Resident Evil 4 preview embargo, and they announced a showcase for March 9th, next week at 2:30 Pacific time. Capcom is going to share updates and new information on Resident Evil 4, Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, and Exo Primal. So it's a 26-minute showcase, Jeff. What are you expecting from Capcom here?
I'm expecting mostly just commercials or games already announced. I think maybe there's a possibility for a surprise. No idea. I think there's also, that's a finite amount of time, 26 minutes, right? That was the number. That's pretty quick. And they have a lot of games that they want to talk about that we already know about. To me, this sounds like, hey, everyone wants to see Resident Evil 4. Let's keep doing that. And then let's surround it with all the other stuff we're trying to sell. No one knows, we know, but I mean, no one knows what Exo Primal is. Like no normal person does. A lot of them are going to want to see more Resident Evil 4. Let's take this opportunity to teach them what Exo Primal is and see if we can get some success for some of these other franchises. Yeah, that seems like what this is to me. And then maybe they announce a Mega Man game. Like maybe there's an actual surprise in there. Who knows? But
Don't get me
probably
riled
not.
up. Don't.
I know.
We
I
know
know.
they're. And if they do announce a new Mega Man game, it's not going to be what we want. All right. Because they
Yeah,
don't.
I wish they had that Capcom leak. Like there was a Mega Man game on there, but even that like seemed like, is that a mobile game? That sounds like it could be a mobile game. So yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
I want a new Mega Man more than I want a Mega Man X to get rebooted in a big way. Not even, I don't want it to be even like a standard 2D side scroll. I want them to like look at Mega Man the same way they looked at Resident Evil 7 and say, what does Mega Man look like in the year 2024? Like what is
Yep.
Mega Man going to be? We can
what's the Metroid Prime even? Like,
exactly.
yeah.
We can keep pandering to the Miles and Jeffs of the world and giving them their hyper niche 2D platformers that they'll buy and nobody else will care about. But how do we reinvent Mega Man? That's what I want. And so if they did that, yeah, let's go. I do agree, though. I think this overall show is going to be like, hey, here's our upcoming slate of games. Here's this stuff. Here's when you can play it. Get excited about the upcoming future of Capcom titles. That being said, a couple things that I'm expecting. We already know that a demo for Resident Evil 4 is coming ahead of launch. So I imagine they're going to do what they did with the like kind of Series X and PS5 upgrades for Resident Evil and say, hey, you can play the Resident Evil 4 demo right after this show and shadow drop that. I also hope we get the Exoprimal release date because originally Exoprimal was scheduled for early 2023. And now we're going to have Resident Evil 4 and I imagine Street Fighter coming out before Exoprimal does. So it'd be cool to get an update and a release date because I've been talking to people who've been part of the play testing for Exoprimal, and things are positive. If you're a fan of Earth Defense Force, nonsensical shoot everything on the screen games, I've heard a lot of really great things. It's got an Overwatch type class system in there as well. So it's combining some modern elements, but I'm a big Earth Defense Force guy, so I will definitely be checking that out. Do you think we see Pragmata? That game has been quiet. There's been a lot of rumblings.
It wasn't one of the games in the list, but it is one. I no, because when did we see Pragmata? That was at a PlayStation event, right?
That was at a PlayStation event, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe somebody shared a listing from the Xbox store for Pragmata that, like earlier this week or last week.
I bet. Yeah, I bet it's not actually. I bet it's a marketing deal, right? That was them filling out their showcase with stuff. But I still think that marketing deal is probably in place. So they, that seems like if it shows up anywhere, it pops up in that PlayStation showcase. It's going to happen before E3.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited. I'm excited to see more Resident Evil 4. I'm excited to get my hands on it. That's when they drop that demo, I'm definitely diving in. I like that they do these weird little 30-minute demo. Like it's kind of gimmicky. It's kind of annoying for some people, but it is kind of a fun way to like pander to the FOMO and get everyone, excited to dive in and play it right away. And then it'll be pretty much 2 weeks from then that we'll have our hands on Resident Evil 4. But yeah, I would love a Mega Man. I'm not expecting any big surprises from this showcase.
No, I would temper expectations, everybody.
Super chat from Randy G says they need to bring back Onimusha. You an Onimusha fan?
I never played any Onimushas. I remember always seeing the preview press coverage in magazines, and then the advertisements and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'll check that out. But it was always like, there's a bunch of other games I need to catch up with, so I never got around to it. I know people love them though. People love Onimusha.
Yeah, seeing that come back in the RE engine, I think would be really cool. We are getting a lot of feudal Japan games right now,
right?
So that might be the reason that Capcom doesn't do it. But I think, yeah, seeing that world brought to life in the RE engine would be, I mean, as they've proven with so many different genres and so many different franchises, they can make that engine work and they can make that engine shine. And I think that franchise is ripe for some experimentation. And it would be interesting to see how they brought it back, because it was kind of like a weird fusion of an action game and Resident Evil. So I'd be interested to see how that could come back.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, Jeff, another game I want to talk about that dropped this week is Wolong Fallen Dynasty. So this is the latest from Team Ninja, the folks who've done stuff like Nioh 1 and 2, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. They have a lengthy record of producing amazing action games. People love the combat of these games. People speak so highly of stuff like Nioh. And so when Wolong was announced, it's basically a fantasy take on Three Kingdoms. So it's got all your pals from Dynasty Warriors are here, and it's a Souls-like that you can play in co-op, and you're basically going through and fighting a bunch of demons and mythology based on Chinese folklore. So there's been a bunch of demos leading up to this, but it's now out. You can play it on Xbox Game Pass, and I've been playing it. I'm about 9 hours in so far. Jeff, have you been playing Wolong?
I have not. I played the demo over the summer. I played a little bit of it. I was like, oh, there's something here. I'll get around to it. Someone else on the team was able to take it and like do a quick look for us while I was doing like 5 other things. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll get around to it when I can. It is something like the PC performance is a little off. So I'm like, man, I wanted to play it on my Steam Deck. I'm still gonna just boot it up and see for myself. But I'm always that's kind of that can always derail like, oh, well, I guess I'll just wait for a patch. I try not to be that guy. So I'm still gonna boot it up myself and see. But I love a Team Ninja action game, and then I've really liked the idea of them trying to go and meet From Software on their turf.
Yes.
And they've been doing that for a while now. And it seems like this is the one where it's like they've mashed up those two things in such a way that it's this is going to be the one that I think people talk about for years and years and years, way more than even Neo or some of the other stuff that Team Ninja's done. This is going to be like, yeah, man, they did Ninja Gaiden and those games ruled, and then they did Wolong, and man, wasn't that awesome? And now we're on Wolong 3 or whatever. And boy, when that first one came out, and that it just got off to that hot start that it gets off to, I'm never going to forget that. And I think they are building something right now that is pretty impressive. And it's like the truth is, Team Ninja action and the way it feels has always been better than anybody else, including From Software. It's just From Software is literally better at everything else, and then also still very good at combat, especially in a game like Sekiro. Right. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, From's like they just show off like, yeah, we can also do that. Of course we can do that.
Yeah, we can. Okay, that's not just them. All right.
Exactly.
We are making specific decisions to have our games control this way. All right.
Exactly. It's like, geez, okay, we get it. From stunting on everybody, but when it comes down to it, if you actually like just the best feeling games for someone with a sword, someone doing kung fu, it still actually is Team Ninja. And so Wolong being able to capitalize on that and then have the stuff that's like, okay, what else can we do to make this a Soulsborne-like game and keep it approachable? It's very enticing to me. And it's one, I mean, man, what a busy year already, but it's one I don't want to miss. I don't want to let it go by. But I'm also looking at like a Dragon Ishin, and I'm like, man, I haven't really even touched that, and I want to play that too. So I'm making my choices here and there, and I'm kind of waiting to see what more people are saying about Wolong, like yourself. I believe you're enjoying it, right?
Yes. So yeah, I'm a Souls sicko. I'm a masochist. I love just getting crushed, getting my neck stepped on when I play games.
Of course.
I like rage sweats. I like to just scream into the void. I have a pillow on the floor next to me when I'm playing games that I can just scream into, because that's what gets me off, Jeff. All right, that's what.
Yeah, totally.
So going into this,
a true pervert.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I love Neo. And a lot of people, this is an Xbox podcast, so a lot of people, I think, listening to the show probably didn't play Neo because it was a PlayStation exclusive. But Neo 1 and 2, those games kick so much ass. Those games feel so good. And that was kind of Team Ninja's foray into the Souls-like space, if you will. And like you said, that was them saying, all right, From, we're going to dip our toes in the pool. And not only that, we're going to make a big splash. And they did. People love Neo. And if you've played Neo, you know why. Combat feels great. It's so much faster than most From Software games. Really fluid, really flashy, and that's what Wolong is. And Wolong is a big multi-platform release. It's dropping day one in Game Pass, and it definitely caters more to the Dark Souls crowd than I think Neo does. Right. It's still fast. It still feels really good. Still feels really fluid, but it's more grounded in what makes games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring so beloved. And so I think that's going to turn a lot of people onto it. I've been having a lot of fun with it, but you talked about this being more accessible. I want to touch on one big point of contention right now with this game. There is if you're watching the video version, this boss that's on the screen right now, General of Man. This is a boss you fight 10 minutes into the game. This boss is such a skill check. I'm like, as someone who plays a lot of these games, loves the challenges, even I was like, okay, this is going to instantly turn people off from this game. Like, it took me about 6 tries, so I died definitely several times. It wasn't impossible, but I remember distinctly thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be such a hurdle for so many people. And sure enough, we've seen a lot of people on Twitter talking about it. I've had people in my DM saying, dude, what is this first fight? why on earth did they do this? And people who are deeper in the game, people who've finished the game, have come out and said, this boss fight is harder than almost anything in this game. You don't fight another boss this hard until you're over halfway through the game. And so it is this skill check that says, all right, if you want to play this game, you have to learn how to parry. If you can't parry, turn this game off. Just turn this game off and move on to something else. And that's a bold decision. It's important to the fundamentals of this game. So on one hand, I understand why they did it, but also to do that 10 minutes into the experience and expect someone to just push through it, it's asking
a lot. It's a lot.
One of my good friends, one of my main co-op buddies, we've played through all of the Souls games. We do all of we're big Monster Hunter fans. We're big Wild Hearts fans. A lot of the, quintessential hardcore games, brother.
Right.
He's my main co-op partner. He was livid. We were trying to, because you have to beat that boss before you can play in co-op. And so we wanted to play this co-op. We're sitting there, we're sweating over it. I beat it. 35 minutes later, 20 plus tries later, he finally beats it. And he was borderline about to just turn the game off. He was almost like, okay, maybe this game isn't for me. And he's someone who has gone through the gauntlet. So when he is struggling with this experience, I have to look at the casual fan who boots this up on Xbox Game Pass and says, oh, this looks neat. Let me dive in. That person, I'm sorry. I feel really bad for that person who is not a hardcore Souls player, who just wants to check out Wo Long, gets to the first boss and says, all right, I'm uninstalling this. And I've talked to a lot of people who've done that exact thing.
I wonder if they tune it down. I guess it's a possibility going along the lines of it's been tested and tested and tested, and they just sort of lost the thread on what they were actually going for with this, or maybe this is the intended purpose. And but you gotta imagine, like, no, they don't want people giving up on the game 10 minutes in. Like, they don't want that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they respond to it. But I don't know. To me, you say all that, I'm like, man, I want to go try this,
dude. It's so good.
There and
once you get past that and it opens up, and a lot of the footage I'm using here is because I'm using the staff weapon, this wooden kind of bow staff. It's super fast, super quick, exactly my play style. There's a big hammer, there's some swords, there's some dual wielding. Every single weapon feels dramatically different. And not only that, this is a really interesting Souls-like, because you don't necessarily have to specialize in, I want to only be a caster, or I only want to use bows, or I only want to use this. You can have 2 melee weapons equipped, you can have 2 ranged weapons equipped, and you can use magic freely. You don't have to have like a wand or a staff to cast magic. So you can use everything at your disposal all at the same time. And that makes the dynamic of every single fight really engaging. So I recommend that if you are interested in it, you try to find a way to push through. Some pro tips if you do. One thing that this game kind of explains but doesn't explain well enough is the morale system. So not only do you have a character level, you have a morale system. So you have morale, enemies have morale. If you see an enemy that has a bigger morale number than you, they are going to do more damage to you, and you are going to do less damage to it. So that final boss, or that first boss in the first 10 minutes, is level 10 for morale. I would recommend going back out and just grinding enemies, killing them over and over to get your morale to 15 or so. And then once you do that, you'll notice that, wow, I'm doing a lot more damage and taking a lot less damage when I get hit, and that will make that fight so much easier. The game doesn't explain that. If you go in with 10 morale and fight him at 10 morale, that is such a gauntlet. It is such a brutal gauntlet. So do that if you're struggling, but if you have just moved on, I also understand, because it's a lot. It's a lot to ask from a player. And what I've heard from people who've played the pre-release demos versus the full version is that they did tune that boss down a little bit. Apparently, in the demo, it was harder than that. And man, that's a choice. That's a design choice. Again, that's Team Ninja saying, this is our game. Learn it or don't play it. And that's,
yeah,
I don't know.
They're getting everyone. They're going to talk about it, though. I have seen the conversation, and maybe it's like a strategy of, we're going to make a boss right there 10 minutes in that people are going to want to go look up YouTube strategies about, and that's going to encourage content creators to want to make stuff about it, and that like builds on itself, and that maybe we believe that's the way that these games succeed. Well, maybe there's something to it.
Yeah.
I am definitely going to go try this boss, though. I can't wait now.
It's a challenge when places like Fextra Life are doing guides boss fight guides on the introductory tutorial boss of the game. That's how you know it's a challenge. But yeah, highly recommend it. Outside of that, I've been loving it. A lot of really great creature design, a lot of great combat. Wolong Fallen Dynasty is what I wanted. And Koei Tecmo in general, despite their issues with PC, because both Wolong and Wild Hearts have not had great PC launches, they've been delivering the exact games I want to be playing. Like, I was not expecting to love Wild Hearts. I'm a big Monster Hunter fan, so I knew I would like it. But I've played stuff like Dauntless, and it's just, you know, Monster Hunter has a certain feel to it. It feels a certain way. And when it doesn't feel that way, I don't really connect with it. But Wild Hearts, man, I think I have like 2 or 3 days of playtime in that now, and I've just been hooked. I've been hooked on the loop. I've been hooked on the weird Fortnite-esque building systems, and that game has just delivered. So for me, Koei Tecmo just back to back with Wild Hearts and Wolong has kind of dominated the first quarter of the year in an unexpected way.
Yeah, and it's not like well, everyone has to play those because those are the good games this year. Everyone's getting something. Everyone's eating right now. So just I don't know, 2023 delivering on its promises is maybe one of the most exciting things to happen in gaming in a while.
For real, before this show, you and I were talking about how we both haven't played the Dead Space remake. I have it installed. I wanted Dead Space. I love Dead Space. There's just been this gauntlet of game after game after game that keeps sucking me in. And on like, I want to play everything. I know I can't, but then I'll try something and I just get sucked in. And there's been so many games back to back that have just absolutely captured me. And there's so much competition. And then we have Resident Evil on the horizon. We have so many games right around the corner. And this year it's just absolutely stacked for games. And it feels great, but it also feels a little stressful, a little tiring. And it's, you know, I feel bad because there's all these games I want to play, but there's just not enough time in the day, Jeff.
Yep. Yeah. It's, and then I just want to be playing Hitman Freelancer. So what can I do? What can I do?
Yeah, what can we do? Huge shout out to everyone tuning in live. If you are digging the show, hit that like button, share it out. And speaking of brutal Soulsborne experiences, we got some news this week, Jeff. 1 year ago, almost exactly 1 year ago, you and I, we were on the show together. And we were glowing about the Steam Deck. We were glowing about Elden Ring. And it was just this magical moment where these two amazing things coincided and everyone was just sharing in this energy. There was like that period of time when I look back on it, there was almost nothing negative to talk about in the video game space on social media. Nobody was really complaining about anything. Everyone was just enraptured by Elden Ring and the Steam Deck. And it was beautiful. And a lot of people are like, you know, looking at the last few weeks and a lot of the discourse surrounding a lot of video games, because there's been a lot. And they're like, man, I want to take me back. Take me back to February 2022, please. Yeah. I can't mentally handle another Hogwarts Legacy release. I just can't.
Miyazaki, please just release a game so people can stop caring about what JRPG is. Like, please just do it.
Please. And so, you know, just to satiate fans, From Software came out and announced the first piece, or I guess the first expansion. The Colosseum was the first piece of DLC, and that was the PvP arena mode. But From Software has confirmed the first major expansion for Elden Ring, and that is Shadow of the Erdtree. So outside of the name and one image that's just a barefoot person on a horse, and a lot of the foot fetishists are having a field day with that image. But that's it. We have a cryptic image of a blonde person on a horse, and a lot of the community, as they do, has gone down the rabbit hole and like, oh, what does this mean? Shadow of the Erdtree. Who haven't we heard about? The shadow is the dynamic of and the duality of Elden Ring. There's the light and the shadow for everything. So who's the shadow of it? And so a lot of people speculated the person on the horse is Miquella, who is the twin brother of Malenia. And that is one of the main lore figures in Elden Ring that you don't fight in the base game. So a lot of people are speculating that is going to be the big final baddie of Shadow of the Erdtree.
I like all the memes. Like Michaela's like, hey, so where's my my friends and all these other? Where's the generals I know? And then your characters could be like, no, I don't know, never met them. I gotta go though. Peace out.
Never heard of him, dog.
Sorry, never even heard of him.
Don't know what to
never
tell
heard
you.
that name in my life.
No, just covered in blood. You're wearing their flesh on your body. What?
Totally.
I'm sorry. Who? Jeff, how are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about diving back into Elden Ring? How are you feeling about having any excuse to revisit that world?
Let's go. Yes, let's go. Yes, I can't wait. I love Elden Ring. I'm not gonna wait for this DLC to go back or this expansion. I'm gonna get back in there here pretty soon. I've been looking forward to doing another run, and so I'm using this as a as context for like, okay, yeah, let's hop back in, and then when this DLC drops, you'll be ready. You'll be doubly ready for whatever that is. So yeah, I'm ready. They always do pretty expansive drops for their games. It seems, I don't know, for this, the biggest game they've ever made, it feels like this could be the biggest expansion ever. They're also taking a lot of time with it, so I'm really hopeful that this is going to be something meaty. And then even if it's just like, okay, no, it's about the size of what they've done before, it's still a reason to go back to one of the best games ever made. I'm very excited.
Oh, I'm right there with you. We were talking about our backlogs, and we're talking about the competition of all these amazing games that have come out recently. I'm already planning my next Elden Ring run, Jeff.
Yep.
I already have 3 characters at the very end of the game that I haven't beaten the game because I did it once, and I'm like, oh, well, hold on, I want to make sure I got everything. And what if they do an expansion? What if they do DLC? I don't want to. So I have 3 characters at the end of the game. I'm already planning my 4th character. One of our plays, it's gotten to the point where now I'm just doing gimmicky runs. So my squad and I got together and we said, all right, what's our gimmick run? So we are Castlevania. So we got Simon, Richter,
hell yeah,
and Yoko, and that's our run. So we're all cosplaying. We're all using items that those characters would only use. Whips and throwable items only, baby. Let's go.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I am looking for any excuse in the world to replay this. So when they announce a new expansion, let's go. Historically, From Software has done an amazing job with expansions. Dark Souls 3, some of the expansion content is on par or if not better than the base game. Absolutely. Dark Souls 3 in particular has outstanding DLC. And if this is even a fraction of what that is, and I imagine it will be a little bit more considering the development time, I'm ready. The wording that they used with the announcement is it's currently in development. So what do you think we're looking at for the timeline here, Jeff? Do you think we got Armored Core first and then Elden Ring DLC?
Yeah, I mean, I know for sure that the rumors about Armored Core are true, about it coming out in September, October. That I've been able to like verify. I originally heard it was like, hey, we didn't think that game was going to come out to 2024, and then when they announced the game with 2023 release date, it like surprised a lot of people who had awareness of it. And it's like, well, so maybe they're already thinking it's going to get delayed, but they're just saying 2023 for some reason. No. It seems pretty certain to hit in September, October. September is more likely. And so then where does that put Shadow of the Erdtree? I think it's accurate that comes after Armored Core 6. That seems totally right. I think it's also, it makes sense in terms of like what you would do if you are you don't want Elden Ring sort of sucking up all the oxygen from the other game you're going to put out. You put that out for people who are like, give me anything and while they're waiting for their Elden Ring stuff, and they might try Armored Core 6, and then a few weeks, maybe a month or 2 later, you put out the Shadow of the Erdtree. Yeah, I think that's exactly how it's going to go down, and we get it, later this year.
That would be great. Again, I agree. I think Armored Core is going to be the fall release, and depending on the scope of this DLC, I could see this honestly being a Q1 drop based on the phrasing that they used of this. Hey, here's an image. This is in development. It makes me feel like they still have some active development to do. This maybe wasn't fully in development alongside Elden Ring. And I do wonder, because typically with other, like Dark Souls 3, for example, I think they announced the expansion pass alongside the game. So that was a plan from day one. And a lot of people going into Elden Ring were like, okay, they're going to announce the expansion stuff shortly after. And when they didn't, it made me feel like maybe it seems weird to say in hindsight, but maybe they weren't sure what they were going to do for ongoing support with Elden Ring. And now that the game is their biggest game ever, like, oh, damn, we need to make sure this hits. We need to make sure this is a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I think that they just, this game was a lot to handle. They just wanted to focus on the game itself. I'm sure they had ideas of what could be DLC. Obviously, they built those strings into the storytelling, but I think that it's not something that they really had any. It was not formed in any solid way at that time. It was probably just ideas, scraps of ideas on the floor that they could pick up, do something with, and then a whole bunch of new stuff that they've just been working on ever since. So yeah, it's very exciting.
It's exciting, especially when you have Miyazaki coming out on stage and accepting, you know, a Game of the Year award for a game, one of the games that people consider to be one of the all-time greats. And he instantly says that he's working on stuff that's going to basically put that to shame.
Yep.
It's like,
yep, that's
the balls on that man. The ball.
Let's go.
So again, there's a reason so many people like the Miyazaki formula. We trust Miyazaki because, you know, he's pushing some stuff. He's doing some cool stuff. And so if they've used what they learned with Elden Ring for the DLC, I'm excited. I'm ready for it.
Definitely.
All right, let's move on to Starfield, Jeff. People, we got to talk about it because people are getting antsy. People are getting real antsy about Starfield. Last year, in June, Microsoft held its Xbox and Bethesda game showcase. And the big marketing beat of that showcase was everything we're going to show you here in this show is coming in the next 12 months. The most prominent and highly anticipated, highly demanded game of that show confidently was Starfield, a new IP from Bethesda. It's been announced for a while. It's been in development for a very, very long time. And people have been waiting for what's next from Bethesda after Skyrim and Fallout 4. Because outside of Fallout 76, it's been a while since we've had a proper Bethesda RPG. So people are hungry. People are ready for that thing. And a lot of people were like, okay, well, it's delayed out of November because it's coming in February. And I'm like, no, they're not. They wouldn't announce a delay 6 months out that's like 2 months long. It's not coming out that early. But all of that aside, we still have the March fielders who are out here on the street saying they're going to shadow drop it in March, dude. They're going to announce the show, and at the show, they're going to look at the glowing success of Hi-Fi Rush and say, all right, we're going to shadow drop our biggest game, maybe ever. The biggest game of Xbox Game Studios history and Bethesda's biggest game ever. We're going to shadow drop that. You know, I'm not going to crush your dream. Keep the dream alive. You know, I'm a dreamer myself. I don't think that's the reality we're going to be living in. But that being said, when we had the developer direct last month, or I guess January, they announced that Starfield would be getting its own dedicated showcase. And people were saying, okay, well, it's coming a few weeks after. And now that we're into March, people are like, where is it? Where's the show? What's happening? Is Starfield not coming in the first half? So let's talk about it, Jeff. First off, when do you think we're getting the showcase?
I think it's coming very soon. I mean, I still think it might be this next week, but like I said, I've a bunch of times now, I've heard people tell in my DMs and people message me like, hey, it's coming next week for weeks now, for months, literally. So who knows exactly when it will happen, but I think things are lining up for it probably to happen here. Like Andy Robinson said, imminently. That sounds right. I would hesitate against any idea of a shadow drop. That's just
come on, Jeff.
It's completely different. And when it's a big game like this, there are massive marketing teams lining things up for years, and there's going to be merchandising stuff that's going to be lined up and partners that they have. It's it's not Halo Infinite exactly, but it's going to have a lot of that similar stuff. And they're probably going to not want to disrupt that by saying, and now we're shadow dropping it in March. Yeah, that seems unlikely. So without any build up to it, what probably happens is what we've mostly been assuming and hearing for a while now. We do get this showcase here in the next week or two, probably. And then they say, excuse me, it's coming in June. I think June is still the right time for the game. It gives them a lot of extra time for when they delayed it, and it also keeps them in that that promise of by everything out by June, and then it's also gonna enable them to carry momentum into E3 or the E3 timeframe whenever they're doing their thing. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that's probably still what's gonna happen here.
Yeah, what's the date? There's some sort of space nonsense in March that people were saying it was going to be shadow dropped at March 23rd. International Space Station Day, or I
heard this might not have anything to do with that, but 3/3/23 people like that number.
Okay,
it had a lot of threes in it, so
there was I feel like there was some space. I'm a little out of the loop there for what it was, but I think there was some specific space related event that they were going to coincide with that. So maybe they still do. Maybe they look at that and say that's the day of the showcase. We're going to do that there, and then we're going to give you a deep dive into Starfield, and then we're going to hit you with that final release date. And I do think that, despite some of the concerns from a lot of folks about it getting pushed to holiday, and, I was honestly one of the people who totally could have saw this just being their big holiday game and saying, you know what, sorry, we want to make sure this hits in a big way. We got Forza coming out. We got Minecraft coming out. We got Redfall coming out. Those are going to tide you over. Sorry, Starfield's coming holiday. And if they did that, I would not be surprised. At this point, I think they are kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. And I think they're going to get it out in June. And I think it's going to be the last
if
possible
they're going to delay
week.
it again, they probably should announce that by now. That's my thing. It's like, well, I mean, last time you announced the delay 6 months out, you haven't announced the date this time. If you know you're delaying it, say so. But I mean, have they said anything about like Forza 8? That one was also like slipping into the second half of this year. Or
exactly. They just said 2023 at the developer direct, which assumes it's not coming in the first half. If it was, they would have had a date.
Right. So it's like, okay, so maybe they are being a little bit squirrely about this stuff. It's tough to pin down. I get people being anxious, but boy, you're gonna play this game eventually. You will be able to play it eventually, and just take a deep breath until then. Is always my recommendation.
I want to pick your brain on this because I've seen some passionate takes from community members about the whole 12-month promise and the whole approach to that. And a lot of people feel that if Xbox doesn't deliver on that with Starfield, that's going to be a big blow to their trust in Xbox. Do you think it is better for Xbox to get this game out no matter what?
No
appease
way.
Fans or take the hit?
No way. The blow of putting out a game that is a mess and is anything like Fallout 76 is so much worse than not sticking that 12-month promise of a marketing beat. A marketing beat promise or being broken is not surprising to anybody, and it might be annoying and people might get mad about it, but people won't actually be surprised because it's a commercial and you got lied to in a commercial. Big whoop. If it's the game comes out and it's something you paid, have they said that
it's going to be $70?
Yeah, $70 for, and you feel disappointed with that. That's a whole other thing. That is not just words. That's your money. And at that point, and obviously Game Pass, but that still counts. You're spending money. You're spending your time on it. You can't mess that up. So no, it's way more important to get the game right than to stick to that 12-month promise.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at. We understand, like, release dates are exciting. We all want release dates. We all want to know when we're playing stuff. But fundamentally, release dates are designed to start the marketing cycle, start that marketing buzz, so they can collaborate with their partners. They can get the energy drinks made. They can get, I don't know, Tom Cruise to come out and do a Starfield commercial, whatever they're doing for it. There's all of these components to go into having that release date. And that's usually the driving force more than like, okay, the game is in the best state it can possibly be. Because, I understand we got to balance the art and the business at the end of the day. Like, as much as I'm a hippie who wants developers to have infinite time and resources to make the best game they possibly can and be empowered to do so, and that's partly the promise of Xbox Game Studios, if we're being honest, that's what they're pitching it to developers and players as. As much as that is what I want, I understand that at a certain point there is the business reality. So when I look at a June date versus, let's say, oh no, it slips to August. Personally, if that means the game is dramatically better, then I don't really, as a player, I don't necessarily care about that broken promise. Because as a player, I want this game to be good. And I want to have a good experience with the game and not say, man, this sucked at launch, but 2 years later, it's pretty sweet. And I think a lot of people are frustrated with that mentality as well. But again, that business need is usually the driving factor. And people have bills to pay. I understand all of that. But Xbox and Xbox Game Studios is supposed to be a buffer to ensure some standard of quality.
Yes, agreed.
And again, I don't want to talk too much about Halo Infinite, but Halo Infinite, I think, was them struggling to find that balance and trying to give time, but not enough time. And then it ended up biting them in the ass.
I mean, I think it's they believed that they could piece the rest of the plane together in the air, right? They got it up in the air.
Yeah, it's flying. She's flying so smooth right now, baby.
She's flying real smooth. And listen, there's a whole half of this plane over there that we need to build. Can we do it? And everyone goes, yes. And you believe them. and then that's on the people, that's on the people that made the decision to believe that that was possible, and like they should be held accountable for that stuff. Of course, people should be criticizing them. They are getting criticized. Sorry, the Red Wings just scored. I'm very excited. Let's go. But it is they. I think the lessons have been learned, and that's they're reeling still from 343 Industries and everything that happened there. So, and Bethesda's just not 343 Industries. It's just not the same thing. So, we'll see. I mean,
exactly.
Fallout 76 was standing. Of course, there have been issues, but it's still just not the same thing.
They have a track record of making some of people's favorite games of all time. I know some people try to, downplay Bethesda and use terms like Bugthesda to like downplay the impact of their games. But, before Elden Ring, Skyrim was that moment for the games industry where everyone you knew was talking about that game. Everyone was playing that game, and it lifted the entire industry up. And that type of release has weight, and that's what Starfield has the potential to do. I've joked about it not being one of my most anticipated games, but I'm still incredibly excited about the idea of a new Bethesda IP because of their legacy, because of how passionate and talented that team is, and because they know how to make a damn good RPG. Whether it's your vibe or not, they know how to make a damn good RPG. So that's why so many people are excited about Starfield, and I want that moment to be a big deal for everyone. And I don't want it to be this like, oh, it's great, but, because I think Microsoft has had a lot of releases like that. It's great, but, and Xbox fans in particular, if comment sections and Twitter are any indication, they don't want any sort of baggage attached to a great video game release anymore.
Yeah, they just no caveats, just a no holds barred success would be nice for that fandom. I think
just an unquestionable banger for the kids, Jeff. All right.
I think it's that still seems unlikely because it is still a Bethesda game. So people are gonna point out all the bugs, and I'm gonna be like, guys, that's just actually called charm. Just enjoy it. That's just charm.
I remember playing Skyrim at launch, finding a troll in the wild for the first time, getting smacked and flying 500 feet in the air and dying. I couldn't believe it.
You're gonna tell me that's not video games?
Come on, that is video games.
America. All right, that's video games.
Give me the freedom for some jank. All right, I've been playing Wanted Dead, janky game, ugly game, weird, dumb game,
weird game.
But I'm loving it because of how just video game it is. It's just a video game that says, you know what? This stuff can only exist here in this special space, in this special bubble. It's not trying to be Hollywood. It's not trying to be anything other than a video game. And sometimes that jank, sometimes that cheese, it's part of the special sauce that makes the game memorable.
Yes, absolutely. That's how I feel. But it will get called out as a problem by a lot of people, and whatever. We can have that conversation. I just need it to be fun and entertaining and have a lot of possibility space. And it's a Bethesda game, so I'm hopeful for all of that.
Let's go. A couple super chats here from the amazing supportive people tuning in live. We got Game Seeker M. It's Saturday. Chat me up some Xbox. Yeah, we do. We got a lot more Xbox to talk about. If you're just tuning in, we're going to be talking about Xbox's 2023 game schedule. Will Sony have to share its exclusivity deals? Will Microsoft sell Xbox? And a bunch more. But first, super chat from Nick W. says, Skyrim, when it came out, was super buggy, especially the PS3 version. Yes, it was super buggy. I don't think it was unplayably buggy. I know a lot of people felt very passionately about the bugs. Again, as we just touched on, that's part of the magic, part of the Bethesda magic. Okay, Jeff, we talked about Starfield. We talked about when we're probably going to see Starfield, when we could see Starfield. But as we approach June and when Microsoft is going to update its player base, a lot of people are like, all right, I know I haven't played Redfall yet. I know I haven't played Forza yet. I know I haven't played Starfield yet. I know I haven't played Minecraft yet. But I want to know what's coming after that. All right, I want to know what's coming for fall and holiday of 2023. So what do you see Xbox delivering? Do you think it's going to be, all right, we got Starfield out in the first half of June, and we're going to let Starfield ride and carry us through the remainder of 2023? Or do you think they're going to try to get a few more projects out the door before the end of the calendar year?
Yeah, I think there's still more stuff to come this year. It's not, I don't think it's going to be the perfect utopia that they foresaw when in like 2021, they had a whiteboard with every name up on it, like
just our Everwilds, our
Everwilds,
Avowed,
Perfect Darks,
our Perfect
and
Darks,
stuff like that. And it's like no way. But I think Hellblade 2, and maybe even no, Avowed's not coming out this year, but it's like
Jeff had
that.
to, oh wait, hold on, pump my brakes.
Yeah, got to put, but it's like that is something where it's like, oh, that is not in the far distant future. But I think Hellblade 2, and then I think it's probably stuff like Project Belfry and a lot of other things like that. Some smaller stuff that we that Wu-Tang game, maybe get that at some point. Maybe that comes out this year. But
Woo, mama.
I think Hellblade 2 is likely for the second half of this year.
That's what I've been speculating based on what we've seen, based on how the studio's been messaging that game. The fact that we have seen gameplay on 2 separate occasions in some capacity for Hellblade. It makes me feel like of all of the bigger projects, I know people are talking about Perfect Dark, Indiana Jones, Avowed, Fable, the State of Decay. The list is long of games that are in development. But when it comes to games that we've seen, games that we know are far along, the only one of that caliber that I see coming out in 2023 is Hellblade 2.
Yes.
And if they can deliver that, I think that is a damn good year. I guess I'll pose this question to you and the chat. If, let's say Starfield comes out in June, let's say even ignoring everything else, if it's only Starfield and then Hellblade is their other big game for 2023.
And Forza Motorsport.
Oh yeah, Forza. Oh yeah. So yeah, let's say they use Forza Motorsport in Q3 and then Hellblade 2 in Q4. Is that enough for someone who's subscribed to the Xbox ecosystem? Should that be what they should expect every year? I feel like that's a above average year for any publisher, if I'm being honest.
I think it's above average, and I think it's in line with the promise that was originally made about one a quarter, right? I think we at any moment now we are suddenly going to stumble into and look around and be like, oh, we are in that. Microsoft has at least one big game per quarter. We're getting closer, but it still hasn't happened yet. But it's like at any moment that's going to start. That's going to just begin, and we're not going to realize it until we're 4 or 5 quarters in, and there's been 4 or 5 games coming along with it. And so I think that might start here with Starfield, and then if they do drop Forza Motorsport in Q3, late Q3, and then they have Hellblade 2 in the holiday period. Yeah, that seems pretty good. I would still want them to push their muscle around, get some surprises for Game Pass from third parties, drop some of these surprising smaller games in the line of Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush. But if they could do just a couple of those, some third-party publishing partnership deals or third-party Game Pass deals, and then those games that we mentioned, that's a good year.
And we know Xbox Game Studios publishing has been ramping up. And as we look at stuff like Wild Hearts, we're going to see a lot more co-publishing deals across the board. The entire industry is going to lean into those because it's a way to offset risk for both parties. Developer gets some financial resources, and the publisher doesn't have to pay for the entire cost of development. It is a very smart play, and as games get more and more expensive, we are going to see a lot more of those. So Xbox, they have a social media account for Xbox Games Publishing. They're leaning in. They're going to be at DICE. They are trying to get people on board and excited about partnering with Xbox on games. So if you can have a couple standouts in that camp to fill the gaps, you have a smaller scale Xbox project in addition to Forza Motorsport and Hellblade 2, and then one Xbox Game Studios publishing title that's maybe like a mid-tier development game that's still exciting. I think that is such a damn good year. And that is, in my opinion, going to be a great way to kind of reset after the last year and reset after some of the hurdles that they've been going through. And again, like you said, at one point in time, they were sitting in a room and they had the whiteboard and everything was looking good. Development looked great. The world looked great. And then we took some dark turns in the timeline and that whiteboard got destroyed. That whiteboard was set on fire and all of those plans and all of those ideas were just impossible, illogical even. And so there's been this contrast where they're trying to, when they announced all of the games that they had in development, I think they expected a lot of those games to come out sooner. And that's just not the world that happened. And they're still trying to, recover. Because as we touched on earlier, some fans feel like they're being lied to or they're being betrayed or Microsoft can't deliver on its promises because of the promises it made and hasn't kept at this point.
Yep. We'll see how it all turns out. But I think they got a lot of stuff figured out now. People talk up the initiative like it's some sort of tire fire or something like that, and it's like, nah. This is kind of always the plan. Crystal Dynamics coming in and helping them out with that. That was always a possibility, and now they're executing on that. That doesn't mean the game's coming anytime soon, but it's It's like, okay, yeah, so Perfect Dark's still a big game. The thing with Microsoft is there's a lot of announced games that we're going to be waiting on for quite some time still. So then you start to wonder, like, do they start making other new big promises that we're going to have to wait years on, or do they begin holding more of them closer to the chest? And does that create a multiple year run where they have disappointing E3s or something like that? I think if they can have one big surprise announcement a year, and then all of the stuff they show from old previous games are actually super exciting and super promising, I think they can keep the excitement up and keep people happy about Game Pass and keeping it growing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's their plan, and I think that's kind of what the goal of this year and really last year was as well, is starting to correct the messaging and set better expectations for what fans can expect for when they're playing their games, because again, Xbox has had some gaps and people have been frustrated with that, and as they've seen with Game Pass growth, it's still growing. And they've still done, what they can with the service. They've got some cool partnerships, especially on the indie side. They've done, in my opinion, an amazing job catering cool Game Pass releases. But when we look at the casual appeal and the widespread appeal, they still haven't had that, like we talked about, the unquestionable banger that everyone has to play. Everyone has to sign up for Game Pass. The closest they've probably had is Forza Horizon 5, which was huge. I think 25 million players or something like that.
It was huge.
More than most games ever see in their lifetime. So that was a huge pop. And Sea of Thieves, with its kind of resurgence, I think we're at 35 million there. And that's a combination of PC and Xbox as well. So they've had games that have a great player count. And as long as they can keep people happy and keep people invested in that service, they're in a good position. And I'm excited to see what they show at their showcase, wherever it is this year, because it sounds like nobody's going to be at E3, Jeff. What's going on? E3 comes back and everyone's like, nah, I'm good.
The first party's not going to be there. There'll be, I think Square Enix is going to be there. Bandai Namco is going to be there. Konami is definitely going to be there.
Oh, that's right. Konami has stuff.
I think Ubisoft's going to be there. That's 4, and that's not the full list. I just can't remember the other. Oh, Embracer's definitely going to be there. It's going to be an E3 that's going to have publishers and it's going to have games, and and then those other companies, those first party companies, will have a presence there. It'll just be behind closed doors, doing meetings and making business happen. And so E3 is still going to serve its purpose. And then Giant Bomb's going to be there. We'll be doing nightly shows and talking to people. So it's going to be, there'll be stuff worth tuning into. But the summer's still going to be a mess of announcements that just happen whenever they happen. And we should all be used to that by now.
Yeah, I'm still excited for E3. And a lot, we fixate on first party. This is an Xbox focused show. But a lot of the third party publishers, their games are massive. Their games typically are some of the biggest games, bigger than exclusives in terms of reach and sales. So there's still going to be a lot of the biggest third-party publishers there. And there'll still be, I think, some cool stuff to see. So still excited, regardless of the fact that, the big three, more or less, are not going to be there in an official capacity with the showcase. Everyone's going to be announcing stuff around that time regardless. So it'll still be that kind of window, whether or not they, officially sign because I think a lot of it is these companies know they don't need to pay E3 to market anything. They have the resources to do it themselves, and it's cheaper to do it themselves. So,
and they built up those teams over the pandemic, and those teams are there, so they're going to use them.
Yeah, exactly. Take advantage of that. All right, Jeff, we got to talk about Activision Blizzard, baby.
Let's go!
The gift that keeps on giving. Every day there's drama that shakes me, rattles me to my core. I wake up just in a cold sweat every morning and say, oh no, what did Jim Ryan say today? What did Phil Spencer say today? Oh no, what is happening? Who's getting what? Where's Call of Duty? I can't sleep until I know where Call of Duty will end up, Jeff.
It's right behind you.
So, yeah, obviously some people are sick of hearing about it, and some of us are sick of talking about it. But there have been some interesting developments this week that I thought were, worth discussing. Some big deals. Part of this acquisition, as a lot of us know well, is PlayStation has said, we're concerned about what this means for us in Call of Duty. And PlayStation has been banging the drum very loud, and they are trying to paint a picture of the possibility of PlayStation losing PlayStation losing Call of Duty as anti-competitive.
PlayStation lost Nintendo a long time ago. Yeah.
They're basically
They
trying
went
to
with Phillips. And
That's right.
And the rest is history.
Rest is history, baby. What an alternate timeline that would have been.
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of people have obviously been, tired of hearing Sony say exclusives are bad, exclusives can damage the industry, exclusives are going to hurt us, when they've built a business model undeniably that revolves around exclusivity. Whether it's first party, whether it's third party, we all know, if you've been playing video games, you know PlayStation loves its exclusive content. And PlayStation, from a business perspective, unless that's just happenstance and luck, seems to be doing exceptionally well with exclusive content. So part of the big argument is, oh no, PlayStation might lose Call of Duty. It might be exclusive to Xbox. Xbox has come out and said, hey, we're going to give it to everyone. We're going to give it to PlayStation. We're going to give it to Nintendo. Everyone's going to have Call of Duty. Don't worry about it. Microsoft has been requesting documents as part of this ongoing investigation from PlayStation into their exclusivity contracts to see, all right, we need to see how you are legally looking at contracts, how you think contracts or exclusivity contracts impact your business. Because if you're saying that exclusivity can hurt you, we need to see how you phrase that for your business terms. So PlayStation's been, requesting I'm blanking on the word. Postponements for a while now. And finally a judge has said, all right, no. You're going to have to give Microsoft all of these documents that they've requested outside of employee reviews, which
for Jim Ryan's employee review.
Yeah, we need Jim Ryan's
very funny idea.
I love that was legalese, just them being unnecessary.
Oh yeah, this was like totally them adding a bunch of stuff on top that was very easy for the judge to dismiss, so the judge could feel like it's being fair. The judge's job is to be fair. So yeah,
like, all right, we don't need to see Jim Ryan's performance review, but everything else that Microsoft is requesting
and the timeline, right? It's like that same thing happened with the timeline. Like Microsoft's like, okay, we want all this documents going back to 2012, and the judge is like, we can do just to 2019. Microsoft goes, oh, okay, because it's like that. That's all we need, but we asked for more than we needed. So it's all just positioning by these lawyers. Yep.
So we got to talk about this because there have been a lot of conspiracy theories and rumors and, industry analysts and pundits, if you will, who've talked about the behind closed doors agreements that PlayStation has with its partners when it comes to third-party exclusivity deals. What, if anything, juicy do you think is going to come from PlayStation turning over these documents?
I think it's possible that what will happen is this notion that the exclusivity agreement for a co-marketing deal, just a co-marketing deal, not even exclusivity deal, and how it's sort of just boilerplate stuff that stuff keeps these games off of Game Pass. It could be juicy if actually turns out, no, that's actually a big talking point for Sony. It's like, listen, no, you need to understand one of the big things we want here is you cannot be on Game Pass at any time through this period because we're saying this is what the deal's going through. And that's because that would look like marketing for our competitor. And we don't want that. And it's, I think it's fair for Sony to ask for that. But the way that it's been framed so far is that's just standard stuff that's in any contract. Any lawyer would do that. And if there's conversations behind the scene of Sony really worrying about that stuff, that will reveal that they've sort of not been truthful about that, which big surprise. But it's all, I mean, the big thing here is if Sony has said anything about, hey, let's try to go out and get the biggest exclusive we possibly can. Here's how that would make us super competitive going forward. It would completely put a lie to the notion that getting exclusives hurts competition, because that's Sony's position. And they say, no, that's not for everything. It's unique to Call of Duty. There are a couple other games that are in that unique scale, right, of Call of Duty. So if Jim Ryan has ever put forth the notion of, can we get Grand Theft Auto? He's going to have to explain, like, what, did you have a come to Jesus moment? You're like, no, that wouldn't be fair. And so that's why we didn't do it. Or it was too much money. And we don't know. We have no idea. That's why they're going to go through these documents. The point is that there could be a lot of stuff along those lines in these documents. And I mean, so Sony knows that. Sony probably doesn't fully understand what's potentially in these documents. That's a big risk. And that's, of course, once again, one of the reasons why Microsoft's requesting all this stuff to put pressure back on Sony. And the pressure definitely is back on PlayStation now. For a while, for a couple of weeks there, it felt like, okay, every regulator coming after Microsoft, and now it's starting to feel a little bit like, oh, maybe that thing that what's his name, the Wedbush Morgan analyst, he was like, oh yeah, these regulators are actually just all trying to position for a PR win because they know none of them are actually going to win in court or be able to actually use their regulatory powers to stop this deal. So they're all just trying to be the one that like gets the concessions and it puts out the PR blast to say, hey, here's how we're fighting against consolidation. And it's like, okay, maybe that is what's happening. So in the meantime, Sony is just sitting off to the side, kind of waiting for these regulators to fight its battle. And now it's like, okay, well, now they're doing that, and they have to hand over all these documents. It's not great for Sony, but I also don't think Sony's going to suddenly just give this up and be like, all right, fine, let's make a deal. They're probably going to keep fighting.
Yeah, there's people who are speculating that PlayStation, because of these document requests, will say, we don't want our dirty laundry out, so we're gonna, okay, we'll agree. All right, we'll sign your 10-year deal for Call of Duty. But I do think there is a world where they do, step into that legal Thunderdome and try to defend this deal and, stop the Call of Duty shift at all costs. And it will be interesting to see what the wording of these documents is. And like everything else with this trial, like, that stuff will come out. And if there was weird wording or verbiage in their documents that talks about exclusivity in a way that is different from, because Microsoft is going to have its own documents. Microsoft is going to have its own exclusivity documents they can point to and say, hey, this isn't stuff that we do. Like when we sign an exclusivity contract, we aren't adding these little anecdotes that say you can't do X, Y, Z. Again, part of it, we've talked about this before. I think part of that is understandable. If you are paying to publish a game, you probably don't want it to go into Game Pass. You probably don't want to pay to market a game for another platform. Yeah, so I understand some of that, but it's really going to come down to how it's worded in those contracts and what it all means.
Yeah, right. It's like if, Jim Ryan just like in an email was just like, man, I'm giving these guys $4 million. And by $4 million, I mean $1 million. And then I told them it's $3 million to be in a state of play that kind of sucks. But I give them all this money. How dare they even look in Xbox's direction? And it's like, oh, okay, this seems pretty aggressive. It does seem like you are trying to actively deprive and hurt your competition. How is this any different than what you're saying Microsoft's attempting to do? And then they'll be like, well, it's different to an exclusivity deal with a third party is different than owning it. And it's I don't how please explain, like, just because that's just like shifting around the risk, like who's taking on the risk of actually making the game. The effect it has on the marketplace, how is it different there? And it's not. So it's Jim Ryan and PlayStation will have a pretty, I think, tough time because we all know that there isn't much of a difference. And we all know, we could all see that it's like the Sony's arguments are pretty weak for most of these things. So they're going to have a tough time actually being able to carry forth those arguments as they get deeper into this.
Strap on a tinfoil hat with me here for just a brief second. Xbox and their PR teams have been discussing parity ad nauseum. And that is starting to make the way that they've phrased it in interviews. There was an interview this week with Phil Spencer talking about it, and the way that they are phrasing it with regulators. It makes me feel like maybe they have some unofficial information, or maybe they've heard some things about how PlayStation markets its content in terms of parity. We've heard the conspiracies that, PlayStation pays to make the Xbox version worse. Again, we don't know if that is the reality in any world. But we do know that PlayStation says, all right, we need an exclusive mission. We need exclusive content. We need all of these exclusive qualifiers for our version. And so that means that the parity isn't there because they want one version to be fundamentally better, quote unquote, than another. So do you think there's any specific reason that they've been banging the parity drum so hard when it comes to this argument?
I think it's likely that in those documents, it will be clear that is one of Sony's key differentiators, that they want to show a disparity. They want to show that one is worse, and that they maybe not pay to make it perform worse, but they are literally paying to make the Xbox version worse by having extra stuff being the PlayStation version. And so I think that the Microsoft lawyers feel strongly that they could show a sort of like Sony doing the same thing in a different way, and that would also once again weaken Sony's position.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, it's hard for me to imagine that any developer is going to say, "All right, yeah, give us money and we'll purposely make the Xbox version bad." But
No, yeah.
the contract could definitely say like, "Hey, we're going to give you some money to make sure that our version's a little bit better."
Well, we'll give you money to spend extra time on ours. I mean, that would be fair. That would totally be something that you could, like. We'll give you money to make sure, and by giving you this money, you have to guarantee us X number of hours on our game, making sure that polishing is done. I mean, I'm a lot of that's going to happen just by the PlayStation 5 being the lead platform for a lot of these games. That just is going to naturally happen. But I mean, if I were Sony and I were paying stuff and I wasn't worried about being in a regulatory battle, I'd be like, yeah, no, we're paying money to you. You have to spend an X amount of time making sure the version of our game that we put out is the best it can be. That makes sense.
Exactly. We see a lot of with all of these conversations going on. There's a lot of people in the Xbox camp who say like, business is business. I want to see Xbox be more aggressive. I want to see Xbox do some aggressive plays, and then simultaneously talk about how unfair it is that PlayStation's doing X, Y, Z. Hypothetically, again, I have to stress that these are hypothetical scenarios here until we get these documents. And I think that's what a lot of people want, is confirmation of all of these theories that have been floating around for a while about how Sony handles its business. And if we can point to those documents and say, yeah, PlayStation is essentially paying to make sure that their version is better. Again, is it illegal? No, but it definitely makes their arguments about exclusivity pretty weak. Pretty weak. And that's going to be a big win for Microsoft. And I think that's exactly why they had that what was it? God, 500 pages? Like, their request for documents was absurd. It was so massive.
Well, I mean, and that was one of the things the judge said. Like, hey, you could have totally limited the requests here if you would have just sat down at the table with Microsoft, like Microsoft was saying they would do.
Exactly.
I mean, but you didn't do it. So yeah,
have fun.
This is it's the judge just saying like, this is your bathwater, man. You got to soak in it.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, and hopefully one day we'll be on the other side of this, baby. One day we'll be on the other side of this deal.
One day.
We can go back to talking about video games until the next big acquisition's brought to the table.
But probably the next day.
Guess what? And now we're announcing. Oh, please, no, please. All right, I got to give a quick shout out to the 233 people rocking with us on this beautiful Saturday. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you hanging out. If you are new, we are live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're having fun, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it out. And we are going to get to a couple super chats and then dive into one of the big conversations this week about Xbox's future, uncertain future. But first, super chat from Georgie. Appreciate you, Georgie. Says, I'm fine with Avowed early 2024. What's next, though, Jeff? So let's say in this hypothetical scenario, Avowed's early 2024. What's the next, I guess, previously announced big Xbox game you see coming out?
Yeah, I'm like trying to think. There's like Fable still feels far away, right?
Yeah. Taking
I guess a lot of time. Outer World. It wouldn't surprise me if Outer Worlds 2 gets like up and ready before we're expecting it, but I still don't think that's in 2024. I don't know. I think honestly, I know that the word is like Perfect Dark's still really far away. I wouldn't be surprised if Perfect Dark hits by like early 2025. So then it's like, okay, then you get Avowed early 2024, Perfect Dark early 2025. Like, what's in between there? They probably have a few things, but it's hard to say. I think that's really what this next E3 is going to be about, and not necessarily about like the next 12 months. Now it'll be, we're going to show you what's this holiday, but here's a few promises about previously announced games, pinning them down to a more firm timeline, more likely than not, 2024.
Yeah, I think that is probably very fair. Is after this June, we'll have a much better idea of what they're targeting, because we know things like State of Decay 3, Fable, a lot of those are actively in development, but the timelines are very ethereal. Everwild is another prime example where they're clearly
right.
Like we touched on, they're clearly getting like I don't use the term development hell, because that's not necessarily what the reality is for some of these projects. It's that they are
just development. That's what development's like.
Yeah, they are just having time to iterate. They had an idea. They said this idea is going to be cool. They get a prototype functioning, and they say, "Uh-oh, this isn't actually that fun. We got to change some stuff here." And so
it happens to every game. Every game's like this now.
Some games don't have the luxury. They say, okay, we have this cool idea, we have a prototype, we get it playable. Oh no, this isn't fun, but we don't have the time to fix it. We don't have the time to make it fun. So what do we do in the next 6 months before we ship this game out? And so, yeah, it's hard to say what's next for Xbox, but I do agree. I think
the Certain Affinity Battle Royale from Seth Garfunkel and chat. That's a good point. That's a good shout. We'll probably get that in 2024.
Certain Affinity, and we know Obsidian has been they are incredibly efficient. They are one of the most efficient developers in the industry right now. They can get games out on a timeline, and they can get great games out on a timeline. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Outer Worlds 2 ship before something like Fable, honestly.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Face 23 BKNY with a super chat says, if the deal gets blocked, Jim Ryan should get a raise.
Yeah. Yes,
the man's
a massive bonus.
The man's been putting in the work. Say what you will about Jim Ryan. He's been flying around the world. He's been shaking hands, kissing babies. He's been getting out there, putting in the legwork. All right.
There's very little reason the deal shouldn't go through based on the way regulation is set up in all of these territories right now. Video games are just way too dynamic. It's just not the same thing as other consolidation in other fields. If Jim Ryan's able to stop it because he doesn't want it, and that's basically the only reason it didn't go through is because a man named Jim Ryan said, I don't want this to happen. The guy deserves a raise, a bonus, make him the CEO of Sony. Yeah, that's exactly what should happen.
Yeah, if he blocks it, I'll never. I can never say a bad thing about him again. You know, the man. He will just have earned legend status if Jim Ryan single-handedly can stop this deal.
Yep. It'll be like every time like Howard Lincoln won a big case for Nintendo in the 90s and things like 80s and 90s. Yeah, it'll be that big of a deal.
All right, Jeff, let's have a little fun. There's been a big conversation this week about Xbox regarding Activision Blizzard. Obviously, Activision Blizzard's been the huge focal point, and a lot of people have been speculating on what the deal means, what happens if it goes through, and then what happens if it doesn't go through. There's some different camps. There's some camps who feel, like Jez Corden has talked about this, that if the deal doesn't go through, Xbox is going to just immediately turn around and reinvest that money into gaming, reinvest into exclusivity, reinvest into co-publishing deals, and they are just going to go scorched earth, aggressive, get as many deals as they possibly can with that money. And then as part of that is that, well, if Activision wants this deal to go through and the investors want this deal to go through and Sony is the catalyst for it not going through, then I don't think that relationship is going to be strong either way on the other side of it. But then there's been some speculation, and Phil Spencer's kind of addressed this in recent interviews, which is why it's come up on as part of the old discourse this week. But the idea that Xbox or Microsoft specifically, if this deal does not go through, that they would potentially sell off the Xbox division. So we just got to dive into it. Do you think there's a world where Xbox or Microsoft sells off Xbox?
Yeah, of course there's a world where that's possible. Yeah, there's reasons to do that. I don't think it's likely. It doesn't. I mean, the Activision acquisition was one of opportunity that came out of nowhere. The idea that would be, well, if that doesn't work out, our whole strategy is kaput. Well, I mean, that wasn't true before the Activision acquisition was on the table. So why would it be different now? I don't know. Maybe their calculus has changed. That is possible. It just seems like, no, they made their long-term investment before that. And it really is a long-term investment. They were working on probably a 10, 15-year timeline. And this is not 10 years from like when they launched Game Pass. It's 10 years from like when they like established Microsoft Gaming, and they really were like, no, we're going to make all these acquisitions work. So we're at least looking till 2029 before I think they really sit down and they assess how is it going. They have trends, they have numbers they want to hit between now and then, but I think they're on a long timeline to see how these things are going. So, but I mean, if this fizzles out, yeah, these companies close things all the time. They sell things all the time. They might do it. I mean, who would buy Xbox? I don't know. I guess
who has that kind of capital to do like,
right?
Oh.
And I mean, I guess you sell to Tencent, you sell to Apple. I mean, I don't know. That none of that stuff really sounds right, but also it's not impossible again. So I just think it is. There's a world where that happens, but there's also a world where like Sony spins off PlayStation because the rest of Sony is such a mess, and PlayStation's this one successful thing, and so that it makes sense for PlayStation to just go off and be on its own. So like that's also possible. All these things, like so Disney could buy Nintendo. It's possible. These things, these companies talk all the time about what big moves they can make to set themselves up for the next, not just 10 years, the next 30, 40 years. Like that's the timelines that some of these big CEOs are thinking on. And so, yeah, it could happen. I don't think it's going to, though. I just don't. It's not. The most likely scenario is they see through this deal, and Game Pass and subscriptions and streaming games actually does become pretty important and a bigger market than it even feels like it's going to be right now. And Microsoft has first mover advantage on that for a long time, and then they have to deal with competitors from outside, just like Netflix has. But they feel like they could become the Netflix of gaming subscriptions, and they're not going to just give that up. Not now. Not anytime soon.
No, this conversation's been interesting to me when it comes to people believing that Activision Blizzard would be the catalyst of this move. Is there a world where Microsoft sells off Xbox? Sure, maybe. I think it's very unlikely. I've heard people talk about how Xbox is the main consumer-facing side of the company. They don't really have another division of the business that connects with the consumer, and the current leadership feels that's very important, regardless of how profitable it is, and they have come out and said it is profitable. They still feel that that is an important element of the business. The ABK deal was very much a deal of opportunity. I don't think Microsoft had this long plan of getting Activision Blizzard. The timing, the shares, everything just fell into place, and that's why they were working over the holidays. That's why the deal was announced when it was, because this was the, oh damn, we can do this. Should we do this? We can do this right now. If we're gonna do it, we need to do it right now. And it was this just moment where it was an opportunity. It seemed like a good idea. They weighed the pros and cons, and they said, all right, let's scoop this up. So regardless of what the wild future might be, because this industry's ridiculous. It's changed so much in such a short period of time.
The only thing that's constant is it changes. So yeah, it's gonna keep changing.
Exactly. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that would never happen. I don't think it's happening anytime soon, and I don't think Activision Blizzard has any part of that. Will be any part of whether or not they sell. So,
yes, I do not think it's a determining factor.
So yeah, just wanted to touch on that because, again, it's part of the old discourse this week. I thought it was an interesting idea, and I'm glad you touched on the possibilities of, PlayStation, for example, selling, or a Nintendo selling, because yes, those are equally as possible. There's been the conspiracies that, PlayStation or Apple would buy PlayStation as a big play to boost Apple Arcade and secure themselves in the industry. And sure, maybe those conversations are happening. There's probably conversations like that all the time. As we've learned, Xbox went to Nintendo and said, hey, we buy you. That stuff happens. It happens
all the time. These people pick up the phone. They say to their secretaries and their assistants, "Get me this person from this company on the phone," and then they just fill things out. That happens. It happens every day. There's people whose jobs at these companies is to do that. Find out how much it would cost to buy this company. Okay. And then it's all possible if suddenly the 1 in a million thing where everything lines up and the price is right, and someone's like, listen, I don't know, we can borrow a bunch of money at the pretty low interest rate. Let's just go and do it. It can happen, but
it can happen.
Is it going to happen? No, it's just not. No.
As Satya Nadella has said very recently, the reason this conversation is also weird to me right now is it was like a year ago, a year and a half maybe, they came out and had the big PR thing about how Microsoft is all in on gaming. And they've spent all this money and they did all these investments and they restructured the entire business, putting Phil on the board of Microsoft. And then a year and a half later, like, oh, we didn't get Activision. Well, we tried. That was a fun couple of decades.
Right.
Somebody else's problem now.
It would have been a great way to use a lot of the money in our bank, because that money just sitting there in a world where even where interest rates are higher, it's not keeping up with inflation. But what would have made more money than our money just sitting in the bank is cash flow from Call of Duty and King and all that stuff. And that's how they view it, as gaming is still a very good investment. It is a very good way to use a lot of that money. And it's like, what are they? They're going to sell off Xbox and just put that money back in the bank?
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to sell off the Bethesda the deal that they just made, put that money back in the bank? No.
I saw
No,
somebody in chat being kind
they
of
made all this effort to do that.
cynical and saying that they would just use that money to invest in AI, actually. That they wouldn't leave that money sitting around. They would just invest in AI.
But they already have enough money to invest in it. AI is, yes, the thing with having a bunch of money in the bank is, yes, you can put it into research and development and invest it in new stuff. But if you can invest it into products that already that have a place in the market that can then make money, like Minecraft. Like
yes.
Minecraft was them being like, hey, let's do $2.5 billion, whatever it was. That sits in the bank. It makes us this much with interest. We buy Minecraft every day now. The money that was sitting in the bank just getting interest is now invested in this company that is instantly producing way more money per day than we were getting from that interest. And it's like that's how they view all of these deals. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to suddenly be like, now they're not going to go, oh, we have all this extra money to put in all these other places. No, they already have their AI investments. It's a completely separate place on the budget sheet.
I agree. All right, Jeff, let's have some fun. Let's talk about some hardware, because this is an Xbox show. But until I have a Nintendo podcast of my own, I need an outlet to talk about certain things. And I've been going down a rabbit hole this week because there's been two main catalysts for my deep dive into this rabbit hole regarding the what's next for Nintendo hardware. The first thing was the announcement of Microsoft's partnership with Nintendo, the 10-year contract, and Phil Spencer talking about native versions, parity, all of these very specific things about how Call of Duty would work on other platforms. Phil Spencer's been going out of his way to say, all right, this isn't only going to be like a cloud streaming thing. We're going to make sure that Call of Duty runs natively on other devices. And they've stressed that. They've talked about that. And then alongside this, they say, all right, we've guaranteed that Nintendo will get Call of Duty for 10 years. To look at the current Switch and then to look at your Activision teams and say, hey guys, you got to make Call of Duty run on the current Switch hardware. Good luck. I don't know how you're going to do it. I have no idea. I have no idea how you would ever even do it, but we said we promised it. Legally, we promised it. So could you do us a solid and figure it? I have to imagine that there have been some conversations between Microsoft and Nintendo about what's next for hardware, and that made that commitment a lot easier to guarantee. Secondly, there's been some leaks regarding Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC. Some data mines, some people in the community have been going back and forth about the leaks because we've talked about the Switch Pro and the Switch 2 forever, Jeff. There's been so many rumors. There's been so much smoke, and a lot of that I think was founded, and there's been some shifts and some changes. But the current speculation is that part of the 2-part Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC will be that the second expansion, scheduled for winter, will ship with a graphical update for the new Switch, Jeff. And I'm like, at first I heard that, I was like, come on, are we doing this again? I'm not ready to be hurt.
Same.
I've already joked about how I would pay any money, any dollar amount to play Pokemon at 60 FPS. I don't care what it is, I would do it. And so I've, as a Pokemon fan, I want to say, yes, this is happening. They're finally doing it. Some other things. Tears of the Kingdom. When we first saw gameplay, folks from Digital Foundry, a lot of experts in the performance fidelity space, were looking at the gameplay and saying, I don't think this is running on the Switch. They're doing stuff that we know can't be done on the Switch. And so that led to a lot of speculation. But now we know Tears of the Kingdom is launching on the default Switch.
Yep.
So let me just ask you, Jeff, what do you think of the possibilities that we will get upgraded Switch hardware, let's say as soon as this holiday? Let's say Pokemon's second DLC is targeting holiday 2023. They're going to coincide the launch of the new Switch with a graphical update to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Is that even possible?
I mean, it's possible. There's increased rumblings again of another one coming, or of something coming this holiday. A Switch 2, a Super Switch, whatever it might be. I don't know. I don't know if it's coming this holiday.
I don't know what to feel anymore.
Yeah, I would hesitate to be like, let's all get our hopes up again, because who wants to do that again? But it could. I mean, it could make some sense. I think Nintendo can release a Switch successor whenever they want, but I think the reason that they haven't is because they want to figure out how to do that transition from one generation to the next in a much smoother way than they've done before. They have their subscription service. They have a lot of games selling, and they want to maintain all of that. They don't want to hit the reset button on either of those things. And so how do we pull this off and make people feel like this is a continuation and also a big leap forward, so that people are willing to spend what's it going to cost? $400 probably, maybe more. So they're trying to figure out what that marketing looks like, what that big beat looks like, and is it a whole new game system that plays even differently than the Switch? And I hope not, but there's a lot of stuff that Nintendo is figuring out, and I think that's why that we've waited so long from first hearing about a Switch Pro, and that obviously not happening, and seeming like that was an abandoned idea at Nintendo. But it's like, but that obviously we know they are going to do something. It's like, okay, so they abandoned that. Why? Probably because they wanted to figure out what they could do, how they could make those transitions smoother, how maybe they could take the idea of what a Switch Pro could have been and actually make it the Switch 2, but maybe combine them in some fundamental ways, some strategic ways, to make people feel like this is, yes, it's still a Switch, but it's not a Wii U situation, and it's still a Switch, but it's also a massive upgrade, and all that stuff's going to be difficult to communicate. I think that it is any time from this holiday through the next holiday of 2024, this thing could drop. And while I'm like, the things I hear make it sound like it's lining up for this holiday, I still am choosing personally to be like, man, that's really hard to believe. I'm like keeping it in the, I don't necessarily believe that, even if we see these Pokemon rumors flying off on 4chan, and the people in my tip box is kind of saying, oh no, well, it sounds like maybe this year. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't verify any of it, so I don't know.
Yeah, at this point, I can only believe it when I see it, because I think there's really just been a lot of internal debates within Nintendo about how this is going to work. And I think companies like Microsoft, and they're pushing to backwards compatibility and like respecting the customer's library. I think, and even PlayStation jumping on board with the PlayStation 4 to 5 transition, I think that's making Nintendo reevaluate their previous stance, which would have been hard reset, new system, rebuy all these games, we're going to resell all of these games and remaster them. Now I think there is more of a realistic possibility that we could see some transition, and we could see Nintendo actually have ways to upgrade games you already own. I don't think they're going to do it for free, but tinfoil hat, again, if this rolls out in the way that people are speculating it might, with a Pokemon Scarlet and Violet graphical update. I thought it was very strange that Tears of the Kingdom was $70. That was like the catalyst for them doing $70. And I feel like maybe there was a timeline internally where there was potentially, they were trying to coincide Tears of the Kingdom with some kind of refreshed hardware launch. We know they're doing a special edition, but I could also see Nintendo saying, all right, Tears of the Kingdom that'll be a free graphical update. When we announce this hardware, you paid $70, that'll be free. Anything else, we're going to charge you, much like PlayStation, $10 for the upgrade. And they'll have their big pop in May, and if they do it, if there's some miracle and the timing works out perfectly and they have the holiday launch, they can double dip into Tears of the Kingdom and be like, hey, you didn't want to play Tears of the Kingdom on the base Switch? Well, here you go. You can play it on the upgraded Switch here. And they could get 2 beats in the same year for what will be one of the biggest games of this year, undeniably. That being said, that seems way too perfect. That scenario seems way too way too well thought out. Stars have aligned beautifully. Nintendo has embraced what the current community and landscape is, and they're gonna cater to that.
Nintendo does not. Sappho Chess said Nintendo still uses cartridges. They're not cartridges. They're Nintendo game cards, and it is different. It's flash memory. Sorry, bothers me. So it's one of my hangups.
I want to believe that's how it's going to play out. I don't think it will. But that segues into our community Q&A section, which is dedicated to hardware. There's a couple very big hardware questions here. We got Monkey vs. Tramps, who says, the handheld market is alive and kicking. Do you think Microsoft may soon be tempted to join the ranks with their own device? This is something near and dear to, I think, both of us as like handheld fans.
Yeah, I think it's. I think they're tempted. I think they're tempted. But I know when I would inquire about this in the past, it was always, we have a handheld. It's called your phone, and you could stream stuff to there. And I'm like, guys, that's not enough. But That's been their thinking for a long time. Now, I think they are looking at the market and realizing Steam Deck, all these Chinese handhelds that people love, and then a lot of Steam Deck competitors that have been on the scene for a while and are getting even better. It's like, well, there is a place for some stuff that could be something that stands between an Xbox and and a handheld. And they tried to do that with the Logitech thing. It's not exactly what people want still, but especially because it's a little bit more expensive than people want to pay. But it's a step in that direction. And I think Microsoft just needs to accept that they need to make it themselves. For some reason they don't want to do that. I'm sure it's because financially in their brain it's like, this doesn't make sense, but I think they should just make it themselves. And if they want, also let third-party partners make a version of it. Just like make it like treat it like the way Google treats the Pixel. Like, hey, we're making our version of an Android phone, but if other people want to do it, here's how you could do it, and then we could stream games to these things. But basically they're just handheld PCs and it's got Xbox stuff built in. I think that would be the ideal way of doing it at this point, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to.
Yeah, I guarantee those conversations are happening, because when the success of the Switch blew up and all of us playing, we're like, why isn't everyone else doing this? Why isn't PlayStation bringing the Vita back? Why doesn't Xbox have a handheld? They were probably looking at that and saying, oh, that's Nintendo. Like, they're an anomaly. They can just do whatever and people will buy it. But when we see Steam Deck get in the space and succeed, I think that was probably the catalyst where these companies are more seriously looking at it as an option. And I think what Xbox wants and would probably have to do is get a device that is the Series S, because we're already having teams that are having to develop for the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, and there's been kind of some conflicts about, some people are saying it's tough to do both, some people are saying it's easy to do both, but I think the reality is that it is extra work. So if you add a third SKU into the mix that you have to develop for, that's a big ask of your development partners. But if you can get the Series S into a handheld form and say basically all you have to do is lower the resolution on this device and you're set, I think that is going to be a way that Xbox can get into the space. That device will be expensive. I would say at least $400 if they can find a way to do it. But that being said, if they can bridge that gap and get into the space with a device that is easy to develop on and easy to carry over your existing library seamlessly, I would buy that, and I know a lot of people would buy that. But again, R&D, the manufacturing cost, and the fact that Microsoft is actively investing in Game Pass and cloud probably are deterrents to them actively producing them right now.
Right. I think AMD is going to keep working on more and more efficient hardware and stuff, so it's going to get easier. And then at a certain point, it's going to be like, well, here's just a Series S, the equivalent of a Series S board. And they're going to hand it over, and it's going to be the size of a credit card. And we should just do it. We should just do it. At a certain point, it would be weird not to. But whether or not that happens in the next year or the next 3 years, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to the tech is going to have to get to a point where the Series S can be small enough and cheap enough to produce in a handheld form factor. And like you said, I don't know if that's immediately or if that's going to be something when they maybe do like a mid-gen refresh, we see it and say, hey, guess what? We have the Xbox Series X and S. Those are slightly better, and now we have the handheld thing, and it's just the old tech from the Series S. Let's go, baby. We all want it. Will it happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I want it.
One more Q&A here. There were rumors ages ago that Xbox may produce their own DualSense type controller. Do we reckon this is still on the cards or just pure speculation?
I think that they said as much, that they were testing with stuff with haptics and other things, and they're like, oh, we like the DualSense and we're testing that stuff. And then I think we heard reporting that there are prototypes in the works, and I think all those things are true. Whether or not it turns into a real product, it probably will. But it might be the kind of thing where it gets turned into an elite version first and doesn't get much use. And then when they have a chance to relaunch the Xbox as a follow-up, not even like a full next generation thing, but as the Xbox Series E or something, maybe at that point they're like, oh, we're just going to include these with every single one, just like they've done in the middle of generations in the past. And they were able to successfully get a lot of those controllers out there. Maybe they'll do that. I just don't, I don't know. The DualSense features have been used really great a handful of times, but it's exactly the case of what everyone was worried about. It's going to be really good in Astro, really good in Gran Turismo. A handful of other games are going to use it, and the vast majority of games that come out each year are going to be kind of disappointing in how they take advantage of the DualSense. So I would not try to force anything if I were Microsoft.
I think they are always looking at innovations with the controller space. And when they launched the Xbox One controller, they had the haptics and the triggers. You would play a racing game or you would play a shooting game, you could feel these special vibrations in the triggers. But like we're talking about with the DualSense, nobody used it outside of first party at launch. And it was just this extra thing, and so they probably burned, and that's probably why they didn't invest in the DualSense at launch. And then they're probably getting mixed data that shows like, okay, there's positive reception surrounding the DualSense controller because of this game and this game. And then they're probably seeing data that shows, well, only actually X percentage of developers even utilize this technology at all. Is this something we want to invest in? So I agree. I think it would probably come with the Elite controller first, which would be a bummer because that thing will probably be $200 plus $220. It'll be a very expensive piece of hardware. And then, like you said, if there is data that supports it going widespread, maybe again with a mid-gen refresh, they say, all right, this is the new controller. This is the new $60 or $70 controller, whatever they decide on, and it's just going to incorporate that natively. I want to see it. Really, more than anything, what I want to see is somebody completely reinvent the controller, because fundamentally the controller that we all know hasn't changed all that much. There's been the touchpad on the DualSense, but in terms of layout, in terms of innovation, there hasn't really been a lot. So I hope somebody is looking at stuff like the Steam Deck, and it's weird. Sure, it's ugly. Sure, the Steam Deck control pad is ugly.
Yeah, but I love it.
But yes, it empowers you to play differently. I didn't think I would ever use the trackpad to aim, but aiming on that when I play Sea of Thieves, for example, so much better, so much more precise than even my Elite controller. So much better than a joystick could ever be. But that being said, I don't prefer to play on mouse and keyboard. I want that hybrid experience, and nobody has really perfected it quite yet. So that's what I want to see. I want Xbox to release some weird monstrosity controller next that is like, all right, this is the future of gaming.
Yeah, give us the Homer. Just throw everything in there.
Yes. That's what I want to see. But yes, I can almost guarantee you there will be an Elite 3 of some kind. It will be very expensive, and maybe it'll have some haptics in there.
Yeah, maybe.
Jeff, we did it. That's one more show in the books. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for taking time to hang out, chat with me. Appreciate you. Love having you on. One more time for all the amazing folks who've been watching, listening. Where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just go to discord.gg/game-mess. That's a good place to go. Find us there. Got a great community over there. We are always doing fun stuff. There's a lot of input from the community about what our shows look like. And then we do stuff like game nights and all those things. It's so very active. Just go hang out there. And then we always post what we're doing over there. And then Giant Bomb, just giantbomb.com. Follow us on YouTube and Twitch. And then, yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff happening next week. I'm looking forward to it. And then, maybe in like a month, we'll have a travel log to Super Nintendo World. So look out for all that.
Oh, I'm jealous, dude. I want to go so bad.
It's going to be so busy.
It's going to be packed. It's going to be outrageous. You missed the influencer window when it was like dead. Now you're going to be
absolutely
going public.
I gotta pay.
Woo,
Nintendo jail. It's going to kill me.
A huge shout out to everyone who listened, who watches, who tunes in every single week. Appreciate you. Next few weeks, we got Jez Corden on with me next week, and the week after that, we are going to have Gene Park joining us for the first time. So stoked about that. Appreciate all of you. Have an amazing weekend, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.